Very good. Well, thank you and welcome everyone. I want to say thank you for this opportunity to share my passion and my knowledge around DiSC and change. During our time together, we are hopefully going to talk about our understanding our needs during change. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with DiSC, so I'm going to go from a basic level and then take it from there. Again, my name is Lisa Hulla. I am with the City and County of Denver, and I am an organization development specialist, and I am, again, excited to share my work with you.
Lisa, do you want to share your screen too?
I should be sharing my screen.
You'll have to reshare it since I
Oops.
shared it.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's take a look. Is it sharing? No.
Not yet.
Okay. Hang on 1 second. Screen. Here we go. Right. Let's get to.
Perfect.
All right. Can you? Perfect. Excellent. All right. Very good. Again, I want to say thank you and welcome. Lisa Hulla with the City and County of Denver, Organization Development Specialist. And our time together is going to be spent around DiSC and change. And it's really around understanding our needs during change. I know that this is a change community, so I want to bring my passion and my experience and knowledge with you. So my intention today is to share knowledge of the Everything DiSC tool as a culture building tool and to consider using DiSC styles with various change initiatives, as well as offer insight to what DiSC styles may need during change, and to provide some resources for your toolbox so that your workplace connection and engagement may benefit. So there is got to be something in it for you. So let's start with what is DiSC and the purpose behind DiSC. Well, I will tell you, there is a saying with DiSC that indicates if only people had their needs written all over them, what an easy world this would be. Well, the purpose behind DiSC is to increase self-awareness of our styles. It's also to understand others' preferences and tendencies, AKA our needs. And while we are all the same as a D, an I, an S, and a C, these particular styles come to light when we take an assessment, and how we respond to the assessment is what our style shows up to be. And this allows for a connection in building better workplace relationships. Now, the bonus to completing a DiSC is knowing that you can improve the quality of your workplace by utilizing DiSC to build more effective relationships. And what is work but building effective relationships? So that's what DiSC is. Now let's talk about what DiSC is not. DiSC is not about sharing your smarts or how smart you are. DiSC is not about your knowledge, your skills, or abilities. It is about your preferences and your tendencies based on how you responded to the assessment. DiSC is also not an excuse or to pigeonhole someone's behavior. As you will notice when we pull forward, that a lot of individuals that are of a D style or a C style or an I style may say, well, that's just how I am. Well, that's not appropriate. That is something that can hinder or be harmful to the environment. So it is, again, it's a style, which is your preference and tendency. It is not about you as a person. In addition, DiSC is not a selection tool. This is not one of those assessments that can be used to select people. It is really around making sure that people understand what is your values and belief system. So it's not used for grouping people in a clique. Example, many people that are in an I style, you will notice, sometimes get called upon to party plan. It is not intended for that. Your style is determined by your responses on the assessment, and this is to help us become better in our workplace. Let's get to know the DiSC styles. And so I want to call your attention on the right-hand side for the DiSC circle. The DiSC, I will tell you, is one of the most reliable and validated assessments that are out there. Many people have responded to other assessments such as Myers-Briggs, Insights, as well as Strengths Finders, and maybe emotional intelligence. DiSC is not those. DiSC is all around your preference and your tendency, which stems from your belief and your values. So on the right-hand side, you will have the DiSC circle, and we will go clockwise. So you have D for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for conscientiousness. Now, I will tell you, when you take the DiSC assessment, you are answering questions, and what is going on, this adaptable assessment, by the way, is it is trying to put you in one of the 4 quadrants, and that is where your dot shows up. When you take the DiSC assessment, it is going to ask you more questions if you're unsure of how you're responding. That's why it is an adaptable assessment. In addition to that, you will notice that there's location or inclinations, is what we call it, on the DiSC circle, meaning, and I will hope to use my cursor, if your dot is more towards the center of the circle, that is indicating or an inclination that your style can be transferable. You can move from style to style with ease. If your dot, pretty close to the one that's listed here, but if your dot is more in the middle of the circle, that means you're at a moderate inclination, which means it takes a little effort to get from whatever your style is to another style. And this is about meeting people where they at. Now, I will tell you, and this could come as a shocker to some people, but when your dot is on the outside of the circle, this indicates that based on how you responded to the assessment, your inclination for the characteristics for that particular style are strongly inclined, which means it takes quite a bit of effort in order for you to come to another style. A lot of times what people will notice when we have someone that's located on the outside of the circle, they'll use terms such as like always and never. And that really means that they're very attuned to their beliefs, they're strong holding in their values and beliefs. I will also tell you that when we do the DiSC is all about D, I, S, and C. We are not specific styles. In reality, we are all a dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. It is how we respond to the assessment that indicates what style we have a preference or a tendency for. So in short, neither any of these styles are better or worse than the other. I want to call your attention to the words, the 8 words on the outside of the circle. On the outside of the circle is where the indication of your priorities based on your style. So for example, if you were of a D style, your priorities in the workplace would be that you challenge, you really care about results and action. Now, this again does not mean if you're of an S style, such as myself, and by the way, I'm a smart S, it does not mean that you don't value or prioritize challenge, results, and action. It's your tendency or your preference. So as a moderate S, my tendency and my preference is going to be around collaboration, support, and stability. So it's not that you can't have those as priorities, it's your preference and your tendency. To further explain DiSC, I would love to have you partake in an exercise, and this exercise is called people reading. So what I'd love you to do at this point in time, make sure you have a piece of paper, which I'm gonna guess most everybody has a piece of paper in front of you, and I'm gonna ask you a series of questions, a this or a that, and a this or a that. And what I'd like you to do is I would like you to document either A or B or C or D based on what I ask. But before we do that, what I'd like you to do is think about a person that you are interested in discovering or identifying what DiSC style they may be. So this could be your significant other, your spouse, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, the mayor, the bus driver, your cashier at King Soopers, your daughter, etc. Think of someone that you may be wonder what type of style they are. And again, the reason behind this is so that you can build a better relationship. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes and I'm going to ask you to think of that person. I'll give you a minute to think, who might I want to know? Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's whomever. All right, I'm gonna hope everybody has somebody, okay? And now I'm gonna ask you a series of questions and I want you to choose one or the other, and then I want you to document that. So for example, when you're thinking of this person, I want you to think, are they active, fast-paced, assertive, dynamic, and bold, which would be A, or are they B, more thoughtful, moderate paced, calm, methodical, and careful? Now, no in-betweens and no it depends. It's either they're A or they're B. So take a moment and document A or B for the person that you're thinking about. Okay, so hopefully you have an A or a B listed. Next, I'm going to ask you, in addition, are they C, questioning, logic focused, objective, skeptical, and challenging? Or are they D, accepting, people focused, empathizing, receptive, and agreeable? And I know, I hear this all the time. It depends. No depends. They're either A or B, and then they're either C or D. I'm going to give you a minute, so you should have listed either A, B, C, or D. And now we're going to reveal what style they may be. Now, if you have an A and a C, this individual may be of a D style. They may be of a dominant style. If your person is an A and a D, they would be of an influence style. If they're a B and a C, they would be of conscientious style. And if they are a B and a D, they would be a steadiness style. Now, this is not about judging, and this is not about pigeonholing people. This is about collecting data so that you can better build a relationship, communicate, etc. with people. And so this might become as a surprise, but let's talk about each of the characteristics of the styles. Again, you have your dominance, which are individuals that could be direct, firm, strong-willed. These are people who are really focused on getting things done. These are the people in a meeting. They are saying, what's the agenda? What are we talking about? And what time are we over? Your I style individuals are going to be your outgoing, enthusiastic, very lively people. These are the people who are all about who's sitting next to me, who's bringing the coffee, and who's doing what by when. So those are your I style individuals. Your S style individuals are your steadiness people. These are people who are very accommodating, patient, very tactful. And they are all about how. How do we know we're starting? How do we know we're done? And how do we know we've reached our outcome? I will tell you as a S, that is what I'm all about, how you get things done. And then in addition, anyone that is of a C style is going to be someone who's a little more reserved, a little more private, a little more analytical. And these are individuals, you guessed it, all about the why. Why are we meeting? Why couldn't this have been an email? And why are you still talking? So why do we need to know all these things? Well, when we have an audience, it's really important for us to understand who's in our audience. So I'm sure you can see that understanding and utilizing the DiSC could be beneficial to your workforce. We're going to go ahead and move on to psychological needs. And by the way, I will go ahead and make sure that we have a copy of this particular resource, if you will, in the chat at the end of the presentation. Now, let's jump to change, because inevitably change is happening in our workplace, and inevitably change is happening in the world. And what's really interesting is when we understand what style people are, their needs and their preferences and tendencies, especially when change comes around, we're able to benefit from this data. So for example, those in the D or dominant style, the needs they need, the needs they request when a change occurs are really around having control and agency. In order for them to feel as though there's a sense of belonging and that they're being heard, they need to have freedom and authority. They need to have a channel to be heard, and they need to have that autonomy. So if you're working with people that are of a D style and you are the leader or you are the teammate, this is something that can help you become more effective in your relationship. Those on the I side of the house, they're going to need more connection. They're going to need to have relationships. They need to know that we've been here before, and they also need to know that there's support for them. On the S side of the house, when you have a change, stability and safety is a need for them. They need to know that things will work out. And why is this important? Well, we know with everything going on in our workplace and within our environment that people need to have certain things met. And this will help you as a leader or a teammate in your organization. And we'll talk further about that. A C style individual or someone of that C style is going to need information. They might take time to process. So this might be someone where if a change is coming down, they need a little more time to process, and then they'll come with their questions. So the benefits of having this data are multifold in helping keep relationships and keep people on track during change. I would like to do an exercise with you, and this is where I'd love to use the chat. So Jamie, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to ask you all to consider the information that we have available to us, in that when a change occurs, a D, an I, an S, and a C have these needs. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for some input around the following scenarios. Let's say we have a new leader. This happens a lot. We have a lot going on. A leader leaves. We have a brand new leader coming into the team, and it takes the team some time. We call this new leader integration in the city and county of Denver. And so I'm curious, if we were talking about having a team with many D and C style individuals, what do they need in order to feel good with the change of a new leader coming in? What does that new leader need to know about these individuals and what their behavior needs and performance needs are? Can I ask you to put a couple things in the chat around your experience with a new leader comes on board? And if I were having a team of D and C individuals, what might they need? Of course, they're going to need control and agency, but what are some tactical things or some real life things they would need from a new leader?
Let's see, we have one person said they need the reason of the change.
Nice. Yeah.
Knowing about why this leader, their experience and background.
Excellent. Excellent.
Expectations of the new leader. What's the transition plan? What's the structure? What are the expectations of the leader from the team member?
Yeah.
We have some one-on-one meetings.
Excellent.
The ability to participate in forming any new team goals.
Excellent. This is fantastic. Yeah. And you'll notice these are great answers. And thank you, Jamie. You'll notice when we have someone of an I, their focus is going to be on relationship building. When we have someone that is of a C or a D, they're really going to be focused on a challenge. They're going to be focused on results. They're going to be focused on having some voice, being heard. And so there's lots of data behind the psychological needs for individuals of these different styles. It's not one size fits all. It does require some conversation. So let's talk about another scenario. The next scenario is that we have dun, 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 the work from home policy is changing, and we now are back in the office 3 days a week. Let's talk about your people that are of an I and a C. What are they going to need? Those I and C styles, when you're sharing with them that our work from home policy is changing. What are some things, real things, tactical things that they will need in order to come up to speed with that change? If you wouldn't mind putting some things in the chat so we can learn from each other.
People are a little stumped on this one. Okay, let's see. Ability to provide meaningful, actionable input. What is not changing for the
I
S?
love it. Yeah.
A good reason why that it is necessary. Logical
Yes.
justification.
Yeah, so it is around the why. So we have the what, the what, the who, the how, and the why. That's what the D is, the what, the I is the who, the S is the how, and the C is the why, so that you're speaking to all. Now, for example, if you have a team that is a lot of C's, they're wanting to know a lot of whys. So you may start out of the gate with, this is why we're doing this, this is why it benefits you, this is why it's important that we're in the office. They're going to want to know more about the why. And so the answers that you're responding to are great. Again, one size does not fit all. And having this data helps you as a leader or as a teammate better meet people where they're at. This is definitely not about trying to fit everyone into one area. This is really about understanding what people's needs are so that they can perform and behave at their top performance. So the next scenario that I'm going to ask for is around conflict and communication. I'll be honest with you, this is one that I deal with almost every day, and I will tell you the data provided when there's conflict of communication in the workplace and you understand someone's style, how you approach that, and that change of no matter what's going on, this can be a lifesaver. So let me ask you, if I am someone of an S style or a D style, how would you approach conflict or communication issues in the workplace when there's a change going on? What do those individuals need? I'll give you just a few moments to see what you can put in the chat.
For D, get their perspective for solutions.
Yes.
Having a seat at the table and deciding next steps, opportunity for feedback.
Right on. Right on.
Reassurance and allowing a space for feedback.
Absolutely. And you know, when we talk from a change management perspective, we talk about assessing the readiness. This can be quite contradictory because people haven't responded or reacted yet. So assessing the readiness only takes us so far. It's waiting till the change happens and then seeing how to respond versus react to our people. So y'all are right on. You have this pinned. And again, this is data. This allows us to work with people based on where they're at, to meet them with where they're at, not expect them to meet us with where we're at. So for example, if I were a D style leader and it was all about control and agency was my lead or my need, I wouldn't expect everyone else to want what I want. I would want to look at what everyone else needed and then be able to respond to them so that I can bring them along with me. This is such a great tool to utilize. And I want to share a couple successes that I've had. So point here is to consider the needs. And this is a great opportunity to look at change and responding to people. So I want to share a few successes that I've had. As I mentioned, I wanted to make sure that I gave you a picture of my passion and my work. And so I would hope that this will enlighten you or give you an opportunity to potentially challenge this. I've had new leader integration, and it's been all about a new leader coming in, which means it's a new team, because here we go, 5 stages of a team: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjoining. And this helped with connecting, focusing on where people were and how people could meet the person where they're at. It's about honoring and respecting people, not pulling people from one style to another and causing people to be what they're truly not. I will also share with you, when I've had quite a few leaders, they come into a session and they say, well, I'm an S style. Don't I need to be a D style to be a leader? I say, absolutely not. Number one, we are a D, an I, an S, and a C. And because we are all, how we responded to the assessment really shares and brings to focus our preference and our tendency so that others can meet us where we're at. It's not as though we can't go to the other sections, and that all depends on our inclination. So new leader integration, a success around that with the DiSC has been very fruitful. Another success that I've had is when there's a culture change, new administration, new something, and then team challenges. People are doing this. I've used this quite a few times around building team dynamics, identifying areas of opportunities, and establishing new norms. What do those behaviors look like? For example, we have in the city and county of Denver, we came out with some new values. So that was a change. It's been great to identify where people are, what triggers them, and what lights them up. And then the last one I want to share at a very high level is when there is conflict in communication, DiSC style sets the tone. It allows you to focus on what you want and focusing on the commonalities versus the differences, and then establishing boundaries. It is a key to opening the dialogue. It is not intended to be the one-off solve. It's all about utilizing going forward so that we can build self-awareness, build understanding about others' preferences and tendencies, and then it is about creating connection so that we can have a more engaged and better relationship in the workplace. So that said, I want to leave you with some culture resources around DiSC. How many of you are familiar with DiSC? There's many different opportunities. There's many different assessments, if you will. There's the Epic DiSC Classic, which, if you remember, and I could be dating myself, we had this dime that we used to scratch off on a piece of paper. Yeah, those days are gone. However, there is the Everything DiSC Workplace. There's a sales version. There are the management version. There's work of leaders. And then, of course, there's an Agile EQ version. There also is a platform that you can take the DiSC assessment, and then it brings up some different formats that you can teach and build relationships in the workplace. It talks about when things get tough, when things get tense, when communication is a problem, if we need to collaborate, and it provides some insight around people's tendencies and preferences. It also is a great tool to use within a larger team. I will tell you, it's been my experience and a successful experience at that. Patrick Lencioni's five dysfunctions of a team has now moved over to the DiSC and is called 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. And really what that entails is you take the DiSC assessment, the team comes together, they talk about where their strengths and opportunities are, and then there's exercises that come along with that to help trust building activities, to help productive conflict, to help commitment, accountability, to achieve sustainable results. And then there's a personal development profile, which actually is a great tool that utilizes a individual in their contribution to the team. So this would be used if there were a team over 12 individuals and you wanted everyone to have an opportunity to find out what is their value add to contributing to a cohesive team. Now, the site or the partner that I use is through Your Life's Path. They're fabulous. I've been using them since 2016 when I went to Minneapolis and received my certification. But there's other vendors that are out there. And so I wanted to share them. And there's another site called DiSCprofile.com, which has a plethora, I mean, some amazing resources to get you attuned to understand the power and the strength of having DiSC in your workplace and to help you facilitate the changes that are going on in our environments. I will tell you, it's been my experience in the past that you've got to have the leadership buy-in. However, the use of DiSC when there is a change in the environment or in the change on the team has been just a saving grace, because it allows people to see that, yes, we are different, but in the end, we're all after the same outcome. And it's very impactful. I can tell you it's been my experience since 2016 utilizing this, that I would recommend it highly to any teams that are forming or even one-on-one coachings. So with that said, I want to thank you with gratitude. And I do hope that you've learned something today, or I also want to know, what questions do you have? And I'll turn it back over to you, Jamie, to see how I can respond.
Yeah, I'm also going to throw a link in the chat to the resource document for the psychological needs of each of the DiSC profiles.
Thank you for that.
Yes. All right, Marisol has her hand raised. Go ahead, Marisol.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for a great presentation. I just have a couple of questions. Have you observed, or do you know if people's DiSC profile changes as their roles change, as they evolve to different positions? Is that likely?
Oh, that is such an amazing question. I so appreciate you asking that. So DiSC is different in the way that DiSC, because of the reliability and validity factor, it is something that very rarely changes because it's based on your values and beliefs. Now, those do change over time. And you may notice that where in each of the compartments you may move. But if you are of a D style or an I style, S or C, you're going to stay in that quadrant unless something significant happens. So this is something where, should you take the DiSC assessment, it's very likely going to be the same. You might be less, moderate, or more of a strong inclination, and you will likely stay the same of your style. So great question. Thank you for that.
And then just one quick follow-up. Earlier you mentioned, and it was a great connection, that there are these other tools like StrengthsFinder and just so many, right? Emergenetics, Myers-Briggs, things like that. And so I'm curious, as a practitioner, how you might use the different tool for a different purpose, right? Is there, sometimes when you say, this would be really, DiSC would be really useful in these settings, like the examples you gave, but some of these other tools might serve a different purpose or a better purpose, depending on the situation.
Yeah, and you're right on. I love the question because, it's not, these are tools for our toolbox. It's not, this is not your hammer and everything is a nail. I 100% agree. So I normally use DiSC if there is a team that is trying to build and they're at odds with each other's styles. I will also tell you it's great for self-awareness and helping people understand that other people bring value to the organization. And how to leverage that and how to leverage the awareness to get stuff done. Within the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, for example, of the DiSC, it's really around making sure that trust is built, that productive conflict occurs, on up to having sustainable results. So there is a focus. Again, DiSC is not around strengths. That's Strengths Finder. It's not about emotional intelligence. That can be grown. It is really around understanding your preferences and tendencies and knowing that those can stretch and those can flex. So great question. I hope I responded to that appropriately.
Thank you.
Okay, and feel free to throw your questions in the chat too if you don't want to come off mute, or raise your hand, either one. Lisa, while we're waiting for more questions from the audience, I have a question. So you mentioned that you can use the DiSC profile to establish boundaries. Can you talk a little bit more into like what that looks like and how you would do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you asked that question too, because there's so much information that comes out of DiSC, and one of those things are really around, number one, you have the priorities of the person in the different style. You have what motivates them. You have what could be a fear for them. For example, I'll speak to myself. I am a moderate S, and as I mentioned, I'm pretty much a smart S on as well. But a lot of my fears or things that I have a hesitancy around are loss of harmony, offending others, and really when you know better, you do better. So it's really around having and opening the conversation so that people understand that when we're having conversation, and should you say something that is offending others or what have you, that's a boundary that I have. So that's something that's going to take me from being engaged in dialogue to being a little more silent. So it's really looking at what are their limitations. A lot of times people will say those of an S style are very indecisive, and it's really not the indecisive that's an issue. It's just that we like to get everybody else involved. So it's really intended to honor and respect where people are coming from, what's their preference, not that they can't go somewhere or do something. It's really around understanding that this is who they are, and that if you want to know them better, there's further dialogue that needs to occur. So assumptions, check those assumptions and toss that judgment out the window, or have it more informed.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yes.
Looks like we also have a question from Alice. She said, you talked about using DiSC at an individual level with specific people during a change. How have you used DiSC to support change management and change communication at a bigger level?
Oh, I love that. Well, I will tell you, in a lot of the changes that I've done, it is really up to engaging the people, because if people if people weigh in, they buy in. And so where I have used that in the past is I've taken a look at the styles that people are, confirming what their psychological needs are, because again, people sometimes may not resonate with what the needs indicate. So it's having more of a conversation, making sure that you understand really what do they want, what do they need, and then engaging them in the process. So for example, when we went over from the STARS values, we went from 5 to 3, and it was engaging people in, okay, so maybe you don't look at the new values in a way that you looked at the old values. However, what can we do in order to adopt these values based on your style? And a lot of people, for example, of a D, they want to know what it means and what's in it for them. On the I style, they want to know who else is involved and who is doing what, and what does that look like. The S style is really around making sure that how they're going to be viewed upon, how the behavior shows up. And then the I style is really looking, why don't you tell me why it's important or why I should adopt this? So it's looking at the individual as opposed to specifically one size fits all when a change initiative comes down. And that was my example around the values.
That's great, Lisa. So are you saying basically when you craft those communications, you want to make sure that you have a little bit of all of that in all of your communications so that you're reaching all of those styles across the organization?
That is exactly it. And you know, this speaks to when you're having a meeting. When I was preparing for the presentation, I'm thinking, do I have some D's out there? They're going to want to know what it is, what I'm doing. I's are going to want to know who can I use this on and how does this help me? S's and etc. So you're right on. It preps you for success in connecting with people, and that's really what it's all about.
Great. Thank you so much. A lot of great questions. Does anybody else have any additional questions? Feel free to, again, throw that in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, looks like I don't have any other questions. What a great presentation. Let's everyone give Lisa a round of applause for an excellent presentation and so helpful.
Yeah, I want to thank you again for the opportunity, and I am hoping that should you have any questions, my information is up on the screen. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to learn from you all, and this has been a pleasure to do.
All right, thank you so much, Lisa. All right, we have just a couple last minute wrap up things. Okay, so before you go, anybody who is a member of PMI can get PDUs for this session. Corey put that in the chat for you guys, so just fill that out to get your PDUs. All right, and just some links for some additional information. So the PSCP website has all of the webinars on it. So all of our past webinars, there's a lot of great information on there. We also have a link to the newsletter. So we try to send those out bi-monthly, every other month. So great information on there. We also have a LinkedIn group. So those of you guys that are interested, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, join that conversation. Tells us about upcoming webinars that are happening as just other good information. And then we also do have a YouTube channel where all of our webinars are also presented if you prefer that format as well. Okay, and then our next webinar is December 11th at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So hopefully everybody has a wonderful rest of your week and a happy Halloween. Again, thank you so much, Lisa. That was very insightful and I think very helpful for all of us. Some great information. So thank you again.
Thank you.